how much vindication do you personally feel for the collapse of the January 6th narrative? And what do you think is likely to happen 2 weeks from today when Donald Trump raises his right hand and re-enters the White House?
I mean, I'm not looking for kudos and I'm not really one to brag, but if it wasn't for the work, that I was doing and Darren Beatty and you guys covering it, more importantly, and being brave enough to help us challenge the J6 narrative, not only would it not have disintegrated as much as it has been, I really think Donald Trump would have had a harder time winning because they planned to use January 6th, what they thought was the nailed down narrative. That he incited an insurrection, police officers died, and none of that, of course, is true. So I want to thank you guys also for helping us get this to a larger audience and forcing the American people to think, maybe what we thought we saw on January 6th wasn't really the reality behind it.
Congress, by the way, as we're talking to you, Julie, has officially certified Donald Trump's landslide electoral victory. What I would say is that officially cements the greatest political comeback of all time. What are your thoughts on the 4-year trajectory? It is really a remarkable trajectory and a remarkable narrative storyline to go from where we were 4 years ago today to Trump cementing the greatest victory for a Republican presidential candidate since George H.W. Bush in 1988. And do you think the overreach of Jan 6th contributed to where we are today?
Absolutely. I absolutely do, Clay. And I posted a piece last night on my Substack, Declassified with Julie Kelly, and I started it with even the most creative, diabolical, imaginative screenwriter could not have written this script, right? We're 4 years ago, and everything that has happened in between, the media fixation, a nonstop loop, you have to believe that the events of January 6th has gotten as much, if not more, coverage than the Iraq War, than the 9/11 actual terror attacks. I mean, this was full court press from the news media, as well as Democrats, the Biden regime, the DOJ, the FBI, DHS, also, obviously the J6 Select Committee, other committees. They threw everything at keeping the J6 narrative in play. And not only did the voters reject it, but now they have a lot of questions about what we still don't know. And I do believe that a Trump Department of Justice and House Republicans and in the Senate have their marching orders from the voters. We want to know the answers to all of these questions that we still, have doubt about.
Okay, so I got a couple of things that I want to hit you with, but we talked about a bit last week, and I saw you tweeting about it a great deal. The pipe bomber, and for those of you watching on video, pipe bomber is in quotation marks. They finally released video 4 years later. They say he's 5'7" and he was wearing a particular brand of Nike sneakers. What happened there? What's going on? What is your best estimation for why they can find every grandma who walked into the Capitol and drag her out of her retirement home, but they can't manage to find the one person who appears to have, according to them, actually engaged in legitimate terrorism?
I mean, the only answer could possibly be that this individual now 4 years later was tied to another law enforcement agency that the other law enforcement agencies didn't know about, that he was directed or working with others to allegedly plant these devices outside the DNC and outside the RNC headquarters, what we were told, and the FBI said again this week, the night before January 6th. And the FBI came out last week with kind of it was a save face, right? Because I broke the story about a new report from House Republicans that said the investigation basically went cold in February of 2021. Despite the FBI and Chris Wray, everyone's saying we're still hot on the heels of the pipe bomber, we're going to find the pipe bomber, $500,000 reward, etc. I mean, they did have a very active investigation early on. They even were asking retailers about the Nike shoes. Can you send us a list of customers who bought these shoes? Can you send lists of customers who bought this particular backpack, or even the elements that were found in the pipe bombs. Then all of a sudden, several weeks later, the investigation basically is halted. And no one can give a good explanation why. But in the interim, the FBI has misled the American people and Congress. They said that one of the cell phone providers gave them data that was corrupted. Well, when Republicans took over, they asked the cell phone companies, can you get your data from January 5th? They said yes, and none of it is corrupted. If you want it, you can have it. We see the suspect using his cell phone several times on this videotape that's supposed to be him. Then again, let's bring up Kamala Harris. 4 years ago, she was evacuated out of the DNC after the alleged pipe bomb, again, quotation marks, was found outside the DNC headquarters. She came within 20 feet of this device that we're told was viable and deadly. She could have been assassinated. She's never talked about it. We still don't know how Secret Service agents and bomb-sniffing dogs missed this device that had been sitting there for 18 hours, we are told. So, again, all part of the cover-up because, as my friend Darren Beatty says, once we get an answer about who the pipe bomber was, the entire story totally unravels. And what we will see eventually is the government, the ruling class, political and government ruling class in Washington put this thing together because they thought it would result in Donald Trump behind bars and permanently end the MAGA movement. And here we are 4 years later. Not just a comeback story for Donald Trump and for all of us, but what a total repudiation and humiliation of the national news media and the Democratic Party and the Biden regime.
What do you expect based on conversations that you are having and or hearing for Trump to do about commuting and or pardoning Jan 6th prisoners and those who are still dealing with the continued investigation and prosecution of the Department of Justice? What do you expect to happen in 2 weeks from today?
I do believe that President Trump will issue some sort of executive order on January 20th related to pardons to J6ers. I suspect that he will start with the lowest hanging fruit, which is the 800, 900 who were convicted or took plea deals for the 4 or 5 common misdemeanors. Perhaps he will add to that civil disorder and maybe the obstruction count, which of course was overturned by the Supreme Court in June. But the DOJ, Matthew Graves, the DC U.S. attorney, refuses to just blanket go into court and dismiss those convictions, those indictments, or vacate convictions. People have already gone to jail for years on what is now an unlawful felony charge that this DOJ brought. So I think the sticky issue is going to be those convicted of assaulting police officers. Again, most of those cases bogus. The DOJ withheld exculpatory evidence, including how the police behaved that day. And furthermore, every single trial, as you know, was before D.C. juries, a city that just voted 93% for Kamala Harris. They're continuing to put J6ers, Trump supporters, before D.C. juries. None of them got a fair shake, even if they did attack a police officer or got into a scuffle. There was no way they were going to get a fair, impartial trial, which is their constitutional right. They do think there may be some hesitation to immediately pardoning those individuals as well, but I do expect that they will be at some point.
Last question for you, Julie, and we appreciate the time, and I'm sure we're going to be talking to you still quite a lot as we move forward. Ashley Babbitt lost her life 4 years ago today. I think that's important to continue to reinforce and to discuss because there's a lot of actual untruth out there, particularly from the left, about who were the victims of January 6th from a violent loss of life perspective. There was one inside the Capitol that day, Ashley Babbitt. Did she get justice?
She absolutely did not. And there were actually 4 Trump supporters who died on January 6th, 3 at the hands of police, including Ashley Babbitt, of course, fatally shot by Lieutenant Michael Byrd, Roseanne Boylan, who was attacked by police and then beaten by a D.C. Metro police officer, Kevin Greeson, who suffered a fatal heart attack after he was hit directly with a flashbang, and then another individual who it appears did have a natural heart attack. But no, back to Ashley Babbitt. The notion that the DOJ conducted any investigation, civil rights or, excessive lethal force investigation, that did not happen. Furthermore, Michael Byrd has a long history of disciplinary misconduct, and then he was hidden. He was protected by Democrats, Nancy Pelosi and Capitol Police, who hid him out for months so no one would know his name, at great expense to taxpayers. And so I do believe that a Trump Department of Justice will reopen an investigation into that shooting and Michael Byrd and hopefully hold him accountable, because that is one of the most egregious lapses in justice tied to January 6th, the shooting of Ashley Babbitt, killing of
Julie,
Ashley Babbitt.
thank you. Thank you for all the work. We will talk to you again soon. I'm not sure if you're going to be in D.C. Are you going to be in D.C. for the inauguration events at all?
I don't think so.
Okay. Well, you should be there because Trump and many others certainly have benefited from your work. We will be there. We'll get you on again soon. And thank you for everything you've done.
Thank you guys for covering all my work. It just means so much to the J6ers and to getting the truth to the American people. So thank you.